Damion Lupo, welcome to the Capital Raisers Show. I was just at an event with you in Denver. Adam Adams threw on the Raising Money Summit. I've also seen you here because you're local in Phoenix at Zach Haptonstall's event. You have a wealth of information. You've written 10 books. You've started 50 businesses, which I can't wait to ask you a little bit more about that. And you have these concepts that are a little bit out of the box in terms of how people can create wealth. You have a goal to help 1 million people become financially free through the services that you provide and the things that you offer. So I don't want to steal all of your thunder. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being on here. Tell me a little bit about what you do.
Hey, Ruben, it's good to be here. Everything that I do really has everything to do with breaking the financial shackles and freeing people from financial bondage. So there's stuff I do today, and there's stuff that's been leading up to that. Bottom line is we've got a lot of things that are keeping us trapped by a system that preys on people and their sweat and blood. And one of the primary focuses I have is giving people control of their retirement money with something called the EQRP. And it's because there's $30 trillion as of this month. At the end of 2019, there's $30 trillion sitting inside this thing. And, this is really personal for me, that the breaking this stuff free, because years ago when my dad retired, both my parents were government, military, and the schools, and they played by the rules. And they woke up one day, retired, and they looked and they said, wow, there's not that much money in here. And they were basically afraid they were going to run out of time before they ran out of money. And it's a really sad thing. Most people are heading in that direction because the system is rigged against them if they don't actually do something different and take control of their money. And that's my focus, giving people control of their money and then helping them understand that they are not stupid, because Wall Street likes to tell you you're stupid, that you should not touch your money, that you have no idea what you're doing. And it's about empowering people with better ideas, better information, and then helping them trust themselves to take control of it, and then having the tools that actually gives them control, which is the EQRP.
So the EQRP, before we go into that, because I want to ask you some details specifically around that and pertaining towards real estate, specifically multifamily syndication. But so I hear this number thrown out many times, frequently, that there's trillions and trillions of dollars in this market that's untapped. And for people like me, we want to figure out how do we get access to that. But really, how many people ever take control of that? Of that $1 trillion or however big that number is, how many people actually manage their own money? That's what you do, is you help them manage their own money, right?
Yeah, there are a number of different ways to do it. There's things like self-directed IRAs, which I'm generally not a fan of, and then there are individual type of things like the EQRP that fall under a different part of the tax code. In those type of plans, there's over 500,000 of those plans, and then in the IRAs, we don't even know how many types. I mean, there's millions of IRAs. So there are millions of people that have these, but then think about it, there's 330 million or 340 million people. So we're talking about a very small percentage of the population that actually has control of their money. The vast majority of people are told, get a job after you get a college education, and this is the ticket. And then after that, save and put money into a mutual fund that's diversified, and then hand it over and smoke a bunch of opium.
So how do we wake these people up to the fact that their money is not working in their benefit?
Well, here's an example. One of my clients that set up an EQRP recently said he looked back at his actual his returns, and basically what his thing had done, his 401k that he had invested with a financial advisor for 27 years, and he actually did the math, and it was just over 2% that he actually made after the fees and the churning and all the manipulation. That was the real number. What we're told is it's like an 8% average return. Yeah, no, it's not. And in fact, if anybody wants to look up John Bogle, he recently died. He was the founder of Vanguard, and he has a great quote. He said, "Look, you put up all the money, all the risk, and Wall Street takes about 80% of this. So you're going to be left with 20%." And that makes sense, because when you look at my client, what did he say? He actually ended up with just over 2%, and the stock market's been pretty good, so it was probably around 10%. But he actually got 20% of that. So those numbers are commensurate. They're actually really in alignment with what John Bogle said. Wall Street doesn't like John Bogle, or they didn't that much, because he started talking about the reality. The reality is that machine feeds on people. So we need to wake up. The machine is not there for you. It is there for the machine. And if you don't take control, if you don't think differently, you're literally going to wake up like my parents did and go, oh crap, now what? You're out of time and you don't have any skills around this stuff. So what are you going to do? You don't have another 40 years to try to figure something out. You got to do something like real estate, something where you can actually control things. And that's what I think you're focusing on, and a lot of folks that are listening are thinking about.
Yeah. Hey, I don't want to get too personal. I've heard you speak though, and your story is very powerful. Can you tell us a little bit about the conversations that you were having with your father and how that inspired you to take some action into your own life in regards to creating businesses? Would you mind going down that path?
Yeah, so back in the day, back in the late '90s, I started doing real estate, and it was basically because I wanted to create wealth. I wanted to prove to everybody after dropping out or being thrown out of college 4 times that I was worth something. So I started doing real estate, and for a number of years, I did a lot of buying of property, and then I started developing. And over about 8 years, I made a ginormous amount of money. I thought it was a lot. I mean, I had a $20 million portfolio, and then it blew up, and I went from 20 million to negative 5 million in 12 months. So quite the swing. And a lot of people had the meltdown. I had a pretty big version of it. And ultimately, what happened is, uh, after that happened, I was looking around going, wow, I was like a walking balance sheet. All I had was the money. And now don't have the money. So who am I? And after a few years, I was up visiting my dad in Alaska when he got really sick. And we were sitting there, and he knew that he'd run out of time. He looked at me and he said, there are so many things that I wanted to do, and it was brutal. I looked at him and I thought, wow, he put off his life because of things, fear, just issues. He didn't go digging into something. He didn't go deep into anything, and he didn't really do the stuff that he wanted to do, like traveling. And so it started to make me think, well, what have I been doing? I've been just making a lot of money. And I think this is a huge mistake that people think, if I just have enough money, then it's the if then approach to life. If this happens, and it's never enough. If you have that as your mantra, then you're really always going to be chasing something. It's kind of like when you buy your first car, you're excited, but then your car, you look around, you're like, oh, everybody else has a nicer car. And then you need another one. And then eventually it's trading up, and trading up never ends. And he was always in a way trading up. And I think I was doing the same thing, because at one point I even had a Ferrari, and it was pretty cool. But then I look around and there's people that have brand new Lamborghinis, and there's brand new Ferraris, and then there's Rolls. All these things are a never ending chase, and it's kind of a black hole. And so it really made me think about why I was doing what I was doing and what was going to be next. And that led me to the point where I thought, okay, I'm not here just to be a collector of pieces of paper with Benjamin Franklin on them. I'm actually here to do something bigger, which is where this idea of impacting people and breaking those shackles and freeing people from financial bondage came up. I'm a teacher. I give people ideas and I ask questions that they're not used to, and it opens them up. Because, Ruben, it's not that I have great answers. I just have questions that make people think about the things that are really inside them, because people have the answers. You are your own guru. You don't need somebody else telling you what the answer is. You just have to believe in yourself and trust that you have the ability to make a good decision.
Yeah, man. The mindset part of real estate. I went to this one workshop where they basically had us look at our top 10 goals, and they said pick the one that is juiciest for you and circle it, and just don't focus on, for example, for me, I wanted to have all this money before I chased my wife, before I went after my soulmate. And what they said was, if your goal is to have your soulmate, focus on that, and then all your other financial goals will come along the way. And that was really a big paradigm shift for me. But in regards to what you are doing, I think a lot of people don't have the mindset. Uh, like, for example, if you ask somebody at a seminar, hey, what's your goal? They may say, I have, financial goals. And you ask them, well, what are you going to do when you hit those financial goals? And they can't answer. They don't really have their why, so they don't know which direction in life they're going. And I think that's the frustrating part, because when you can pull those answers out of people, then it's much more easy to help them with a product like yours,
It's
because then they can use it to get into to go after the things that they really want. You speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, it's true. And so having a vision and your goals is incredibly important. The thing that people miss, because it's the hardest part, is to acknowledge where we are. And so you can say, I want to go to New York. Well, that's great. So which direction? Like, how do you get there? Well, it depends. Where are you now? Are you in Seattle or Florida? Are you heading east or north? Like, you have to figure out where you are. The problem with acknowledging where we are, especially when we're talking about money and finances, because typically goals are driven by, there's money involved. It is the great tool and it's a great fuel. So what we have to do is acknowledge that where we are, and where we are as a result of all of our decisions in our past. And we don't like to look at that because it's ugly. Most of the time, it's not pretty. And so people will say, I'm going to go there. And then they just pretend all of the decisions they've made in the past are not really true. The problem is they're likely to be the same decisions they make going forward. And until we acknowledge what is true, and I wrote a book in 2012 called Reinvented Life. The premise of that book was based on 2 years of therapy where we asked one question. The question is, what is true? And when you really go deep into what is true, you find reality. If you don't go into what is true, you're just finding a surface level of emotions and just your glands, your fear and your greed glands. That's really what you find. You don't get to the truth. So I think we have to really start with the truth about what is true today. And then from there, we can go forward. If you don't start with what is true, you're not really going to know where you're starting from. And so going to New York is going to be an impossible vision. Like you're never going to be able to go there. You have to figure it out what's true today.
One of the things that I really like about the way that you speak at conferences and what I've seen of you is you really tap into the philosophy and emotion of the mindset of the audience, and you're actually doing it right now. You're not even talking numbers, but you're making and provoking questions and thought of how can I do something different, and maybe I can look at things in a way so that I can advance in life. That's a very fascinating part about the way that you present. I've always liked that. So, but there's a couple of different directions I want to go. One of the things I want to know is how you got into doing the QRP and doing that. I mean, you were an investor before, right? And then somehow you got into that. Tell us about how that evolution took place.
So there's a part of me, and this is based if you're familiar with Cash Flow Quadrant from Robert Kiyosaki's series. There's a part of me that's always an investor, and I'm always investing, and it's because I think that that's an important part of our brain. It's also the least taxed. So if you get smart in that space, you can actually keep more of your wealth. And so I realized that when I was looking out, seeing what my dad did and many other people, there was this focus on one asset class. Here's the crazy part: people think that they're diversified because they have mutual funds full of mutual funds. And I look at them and I go, it's all paper assets. And whose asset is it? I'm not really sure, because do you really have any control? And so what happened is I started thinking about my real estate experience, and then I collided into somebody that came to me and said, I want to use my retirement money to buy some metals. And I said, that's really interesting. And at the time I was selling metals, and that was my primary business. And so I realized there was another way for people to invest um, into metals, and I got excited. I thought I could sell more silver. And then I realized, wait, this is the wrong question. Like, what could I actually do better to help more people? I could give them a different tool that would allow them to invest in all sorts of things other than mutual funds. And it was kind of an accident, but I think the universe gives us accidents. Maybe they call them coincidences, or a gift. And when I saw that, it made me think, gosh, there's something I could really do that would matter to a lot of people if I went deep into this. And that's part of what my dad missed out on, and a lot of people miss out on. They never do that 10,000 hours. They never really pursue mastery. And we all have something. We all have something deeply valuable to give to the world. And it's about committing. Because when you commit, there's divine acts of providence that will support you, things that you could never foresee. There's a great quote by Goethe on this, and it's true. You have to commit. So I committed. I committed hard into this space, and it wasn't about committing to a business to sell something. It was about committing to the people that I was going to serve and impact and release and free. And then the stuff kind of works itself out. But there has to be a deeper mission of why. It can't just be because I want to have a business that makes me a bunch of money. Like, if that's all you're about, you're screwed. Like, that's not enough.
Yeah, there's a level of self-actualization that I see in your personality that in order for you to feel fulfilled, you need to not only help but be the greatest version of yourself, which is very exciting. I love hanging around people that are like that. But let's go into, you had mentioned you were in silver. At your presentation, you pull out a piece of gold. I've seen people uh, pay you for it and then you buy it back from them typically. But this last event, the guy was actually, he kept the gold. Does that happen to you very frequently?
One of the things that I like to do is to really give people opportunities to learn something new. When people think that they know everything, or they think they know how something's going to end, whether it's my presentation or the markets, people's egos tend to drive them off a cliff. And so I really want to shake people up, because the reality is the market's going to shake you up. And I want you to be able to think about things. For example, it's really easy to get into real estate. It is not so easy to get out of real estate. So people think, oh, I'm going to go do this thing, but they have no idea what their exit strategy is. And that's one of the lessons with anything. Very easy to get out of a stock if you make a mistake. Get into a piece of real estate. I mean, it's taken me 2 years before to get out of pieces of real estate. So it's something that people really need to think about, the liquidity and the speed and how sticky things are before they go pull the trigger. I think it's very exciting to look at investments. Go, this is really cool. And I've seen people that are locked up for 7 and 10 years, and they never really thought about, well, what do I do if I actually need this money? Or what happens if the markets collapse? Or they're not thinking, because thinking is hard work. Sexy stories, that makes us happy. It creates endorphins and all these fun chemicals in our body because we get excited. It's the opposite when you have something collapse and you hadn't really thought about it. It's literally like panic and terror. So what I'm doing is teaching people how to think into the future, so that when things happen, they're not shocked. They go, okay, well, I have a plan. It's the same way that you can think about, what would you do if I handed you $100,000 or $1,000,000 or $10 million? What would you do with that money? And if your answer is, well, I would invest it, I'd say exactly how. And if you don't know, then you'll never get that money. If you say I would give it away, then you will never get that money, because you're not a good steward. The universe doesn't say, oh, sure, let me give you some resources so you can give them away. It gives people resources because they're good stewards, and they know how to multiply those, because they know how to embrace them and do something with them. It's a really powerful question. Ask that. 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, a million. Make sure you're really crystal clear. When you are, you'll start finding that things are falling into your lap, because the universe knows that you've thought through it. It's an amazing thing. And if you just try it, you might be shocked.
Do your clients typically ask you if you're an investor yourself?
I think it comes up in most of the conversations, because people want to do business with people, and they it's not just a box that you're doing. I guess if you're working with Fidelity, it's a box, or Schwab, or any of these other companies. But when you're doing business with an actual person, and they're giving, like, I have a lot of opinions about things. My opinions are based on experiences. It's not based on a book I read on something, like firsthand experiences. And so having been a professional investor for 2 decades, and having made tens of millions of dollars, and having lost tens of millions of dollars, having raised $100 million, like all these things that I've done, it's really different than people that say, I've got an idea, or let me sell you something because I studied and I have some exam that I passed. Like, that's all baloney. It doesn't really matter, because any monkey can go memorize some answers. The question is, can you survive the real world? And I think that that's what we need to be asking with the people that we're asking opinions from. What have you done? What have you actually gone out and bled in the streets doing? And if they don't have an answer for that, then it's kind of next.
I'm very curious because I have a group that is in syndication, and you work with a lot of people that are looking to place their money in something very cool, something sexy. Multifamily, for me, is probably the most amazing asset class, for the fact that you can cash flow and take all the cost segregation and receive monthly income, a lot of times tax deferred. I don't want to go too far into it because you're much more of an expert than I am, but you wrote a book specifically about your product for syndicators. So why did you do that and not just write a book for people that wanted to invest in some type of a retirement plan, or move their money appropriately?
So here's the thing: if you're thinking about syndicating, you're thinking about working with people. It's a bigger impact than just going out and putting your money into something. I think it's great to be a good steward of money and invest. A syndicator is going beyond that. They're actually creating wealth for multiples. So they're 10xing their activity. It's not just them and their money. It's 10xing or 100xing their impact on the world. So the idea behind the QRP for syndicators is giving people a tool. So here, if you're a syndicator, here's the deal. All the money that you want to raise for your deals to make your deal happen is sitting inside of retirement accounts. And the QRP for syndicators is the way that you can teach people how to invest in your deals. And it allows you to do your deals, because you're going to run out of money. And it's easier for people to tap into their retirement account, because that money is already earmarked for investing. You're not going to somebody and saying, hey, you got some cash in your checking account, invest in my deal. You're literally saying, hey, you're going to invest. Let me show you the best opportunity. And I happen to like multifamily too, because guess what? Everybody has to live somewhere. Not everybody has to go to an office. The industrial space or retail space, all those things are changing. What's not going to change? Somebody's got to sleep somewhere at night. And multifamily is it's the supply is so under what it needs to be right now for the amount of people that for the demand. I mean, millions of units have to come online. So there's a massive opportunity, and it's expensive to build. I mean, that's what I do. I build stuff, and the 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 stuff that most people are syndicating right now is typically stuff that you can buy for less than what it costs to build. So some of those deals are really, really good. And the reality is there's a lot more demand than there is supply right now.
So for people like myself, I actually signed up to be an affiliate of yours. And this is something I think the audience here primarily are active investors, not so much passive investors. So I think that there's an opportunity for other people to connect with people like you or other people that manage QRPs or facilitate that process. That's something that I wanted to explain and give people an opportunity to reach out to you in case that they want to do that. Because here's the deal. So when you're out there raising money for real estate as a syndication or whatever, as a joint venture, if people have their money in cash, you're actually doing them a disservice if you're not telling them about different ways to put their money into a project. Can you talk about the different benefits that somebody has when they use a QRP to invest in real estate versus just using cash?
Well, the biggest value with the qualified plan, so QRP stands for Qualified Retirement Plan, which covers everything from 401ks to IRAs to 457s. It's everything, and all these are tax shelters. And the benefit of doing a syndication where you're investing and then maybe 5 years later you get your money back and it turns into twice as much money, that's a taxable event. In 99% of the cases where you do that, if it was just cash that you put into something, you're going to have a big old taxable event. If you used a QRP, if you used a retirement plan, if you use the right one, your money grows and there's no tax. Now, if you used an IRA, for example, and you invested in a syndication, and many of you listening have a self-directed IRA, you've invested into syndication, and you're going to have something called UBIT tax. You're going to lose a ginormous amount of your money. It could be up to 37% of your profits that are from the leverage. So basically, what I'm saying is that if you invested, let's say, in a apartment complex and somebody else's deal, and they have 70% debt, which is very normal, then 70% of your profits are going to be taxed at up to 37%. So this is a huge problem because you used a self-directed IRA. The good news is you can fix it. You can convert that self-directed IRA into an EQRP, and at that point, you're exempt from the UBIT tax for this leverage. This is the big difference where you're using cash, which is the worst possible scenario in a syndication, or you use the wrong retirement account. The best case is you use an EQRP, and it gets even better when you start using the Roth because that's tax-free forever. So here's the deal. It's about getting educated. And that's the reason that the QRP book was written. It was to educate people. So I mean, really, truly, if you're thinking this is interesting or confusing or I'm totally lost, it's just about taking the next step, which is education. And so I'm going to get, I've got a book and I've got a report that I'm going to give you so that you can go deep into this because if you don't, you're talking about ginormous tax bills. And who wants to do that when it's optional?
How do people get that report? Because I believe you have a system where they can either text something or message you, and
Yeah.
then get a free copy of this report, right?
Yeah. So grab your phone. You're probably listening to this on your phone anyway. I mean, I do this at the gym. I'm listening to a podcast. I start doing things on the phone. Just text the word QRP to the number 72,000. And when you do that, you're going to be able to get a copy of the report. And if you want a copy of the book, I'll also send you the book. This is going to give you the report while you're sitting there listening to this. It'll literally download into your phone. You can start reading it. So the word QRP to the number 72,000, and you'll get a report, and it'll allow you to get deeper into this space and see if there's something useful for you. Or what's even more powerful is you'd be able to share this with other people and then help them become free as well from those shackles that are probably on a lot of their wrists.
Yeah. One of the things that I heard Todd Dexheimer say at the event was that sometimes he needs to move the money from a self-directed retirement account at closing time for his deals from his investors. Is your company something that can facilitate that in a quick manner?
So the speed, that's one of the huge benefits. The speed at which you can move stuff, it's literally a matter of minutes. It's not a matter of days or weeks. And the typical custodian is 3 to 5 days to get a response. Oftentimes money takes 3 weeks to actually get from one point to another. And with an EQRP, you're literally talking minutes. I mean, it might be hours, but it's the same day every time without exception.
That's fast. Wow. I had no idea it was that fast. I was thinking at least a few days. Um, so tell us about the benefits and okay, so when you're talking to someone and you say, hey, you have a self-directed IRA and you have another option available for you, why is it so important? And is there other things besides the UBIT tax that affects them? What are some of the other benefits of the QRP?
Well, things that you have options to do, for example, like let's say you've got 100,000 plus in your account and you want to go buy a new car. Most of the time people go into a car dealership and they say, well, can I get financing? And they give you an offer and like you have to beg Bank of America. Here's the deal. If you have a QRP, you're able to write yourself a check for up to 50,000 bucks and you can go in and say, nope, I'll be writing a check for cash. You finance yourself. So this gives you the chance to have all the power and control when you need it. And it's an untapped resource for most people. They don't realize they've got $50,000 waiting for them to do whatever they want. Or you want to go buy a rental property or something in your own name that you're going to get cash flow from. You don't want that inside of a retirement account. Great. Loan yourself 50,000 bucks. You can use that for your down payment or anything else you want. Can't do that with an IRA. It's a nice thing to have 50,000. And then the UBIT is probably the biggest thing that's really hitting people really hard, because you can, as an example, if you invested 50 grand into a deal and that 50 turned into 100, like a syndication, these are kind of normal things. On average, you're going to pay about $10,000 to $12,000 in taxes because it was in an IRA. If it was in an EQRP, it would be zero. So this is the problem. And it's the huge opportunity, because you think about doing that multiple times, you double it, another 5 years goes by, you do it again. Well, you're literally going to have twice as much money over 15 or 20 years if you use the right vehicle. You're going to have half the money if you use an IRA over 20 years. This is a huge problem. So
For the
that
people that are about to have a taxable event, you can actually help them not have a taxable event by just changing the way that their money is structured through this program, right? How fast can you do that? What if it's coming up right now?
So that if you've got an investment in your self-directed IRA and and your project that you've got it invested in is about to sell, the best thing you can do is to contact us and ask if you can do it. It's called an in-service rollover. Sorry, not in-service, in-kind rollover. We roll the asset from the IRA into the EQRP. When that happens, the project sells, you're exempt. So this, you can do it. And how long does it take? Usually about a week. We can get it done where you have control. And the question is, how fast can you push your custodian? Uh, if you push them really hard, I've seen it happen in a matter of 3 days. So if you have a closing tomorrow, unfortunately, you're probably paying UBIT. But if you've got a closing that's 3 to 7 days away, we can still make that happen.
What are some of the other creative things that you have to offer when it comes to having your money parked with your company?
Well, there's lots of surprises that come up. I mean, there are ways to literally go to the Roth is the best thing that's out there right now. It's the best tool to operate your life tax free. And there are ways to get your money into Roth and pay no taxes in that process, and then get the money out paying no taxes. This is a cool thing. And if you want to know more about that, just reach out and I'll explain it to you. Another thing that you can do that's really cool, whether you want to use a retirement account or not, is hire your kids. I love doing this, and I love when people do it where they literally write their kids a check for $12,000 a year, and their kids don't pay taxes on it, because the first tax bracket is 0 to 12,000, 0% tax rate. The cool part is when you hire your kids, you get a deduction for that payment for them doing services for your business. Okay, you were going to spend 12,000 probably on the kid anyway, probably a lot more. And so once you give them the income, you can still control it in an account. That money could also go into a Roth EQRP. So they could be growing their money and their wealth tax free forever. And hey, you know what is really cool about that? You can take that contribution over every year. Let's say you're putting 12,000 in for the next 10 years. There's 120,000 bucks sitting in there. They go to college or whatever they want to do. You can pull the whole 120,000 out tax free, penalty free, and then they can let the gains roll. It's a really useful tool, and you get a tax deduction today. So this is useful for you whether you want to use an EQRP or whether you just want to hire your kids. The fact that people don't know that is mind-boggling. It's also part of the Tax Reform Act that happened in 2017. So it's relatively new, but a really useful tool.
How did you learn all of this information? Where did you go to figure this stuff out?
Some people sleep. That's I guess that's good. I don't know. Maybe I just don't sign up for that plan. Here's the thing: we all have the same 168 hours a week. A big chunk of mine is spent studying and spending time with a lot of people that are the best at what they do. And so I spend a lot of time people probably think this is crazy, with accountants and attorneys. And I'm just spending time on cruises and trips where I'm literally sitting there and we're brainstorming. And then I read a lot of the tax code, and I read a lot outside of Main Street. So if all you're reading is Money Magazine and Kiplinger's, you're missing the boat, because they're not talking about what the rich do. They're talking about what the mainstream does, and they're basically pitching Wall Street products. Like, that is what they do. So you have to go to where people are talking about things, and there's a different energy. Being in events like Adams that we were at, it's being in a different place. Different information tends to float around in different places with people that are more self-responsible.
Tell us some of the resources that you get this information from. Where can people find out about how to think outside of the box? What are your favorite places?
One of the great thought leaders, I think, is Russell Gray with the real estate guys. I think he provides a lot of value with what he sends out, because he's thinking and he's reading. If you want to understand what's happening in Main Street and Wall Street and how it's impacting you, but really understand it, I think he does a great job. So the Real Estate Guys Radio, it's a great show, and those are great guys, Robert Helms and Russ Gray. And there's a lot of commentary that they deliver really almost daily, that it takes a lot of the information out there, because let's be honest, we're in information overload. We are drowning in information, and we're starving for wisdom. And what happens when you have people thinking about these things with their type of experience, then you actually get it kind of, it's boiled down, and you can start to go, oh, that's how that impacts me, and here's what I can do with it. It totally changes everything. So I would start there. I think he's a great source of information.
Okay, so I got one or two more questions for you. However, I want to give the audience a chance to connect with you. What is the best way to reach out and get a hold of you?
I'll give you a tip, and the only way that I really connect with people, because I have to have one place that I can actually focus, which I think is the lesson right there by itself. Like, don't connect with people on 15 different social medias. Like, pick one that you're good at. So for me, it's LinkedIn. And if you want to connect with me, if you want me to respond, because I'm actually the one that looks at all that stuff with all the people that come in there, write a message down. In this idea of just connecting with somebody, like, I'm on Facebook and I want to be your friend. Yeah, but I don't know you. So why would I want to be your friend? On LinkedIn, you want to connect, but you just want to try to sell me something? Or did you find something valuable about the place you heard me, and you wanted to see, find a way that you can create value for the person you're connecting with. You'd be amazed at who you can connect with if you're willing to create value and you're willing to be authentic. Just saying connect is BS. Don't do that. I mean, I literally will filter those, and I'll challenge you. And if you say, oh, I just wanted to connect with you, wrong. Like, I don't need more people that want to be friends with me. I need more people that are going to help me on this mission. Show me that, and you got somebody that you're connected with.
Yeah, typically on Facebook, when I used to try and build my network, because I used to use it for business back in the day, I would send somebody a message and tell them, hey, I see that we're part of the same real estate group, or I met you at this personal development event. And I would never send a request without a message. And it's a little different with LinkedIn, but I have a marketing campaign, and I've heard from numerous people, hey, I received a message from you. Typically, I just discard messages because there's so much spam in LinkedIn. But one thing that I can say is that you can differentiate yourself in a big way by just writing a real human voice message to the person that you're trying to connect with, and let them know, hey, you're interested in talking further, or just let them know a little bit about what you want to do, whether it's multifamily, or if you see an opportunity to network or connect or collaborate in any way. When somebody sees that message and it's not like, hey, let me help you get more leads for your real estate business, it's a big difference. I mean, so I think you nailed it right there.
There's also something that it's kind of like dating, when you're on one of these dating apps where you get really frustrated because you send a message out and it's crickets, nobody answers. And so what people tend to do is they do mass messaging, where they send the same message out. Those are obvious. When somebody sends me a message out, it's this giant thing. First, don't diarrhea, don't vomit all over me. I mean, if you're going to send a message, be concise and say, hey, here, I heard this and I liked it. I appreciate you. And here's what I'm doing. Like a few sentences, because I'm busy, and so are people that are running businesses and things. So be concise, be focused on what you're going to deliver, not what you want from me. Like, don't come in and say, here's what I want from you. Can you give me this? I think if you go in with the right intention and you're concise, and then ask if it's okay to reconnect. I almost never see somebody say, hey, I would like to be able to reconnect with you in the future. I may have a question about this business or this investing thing. Is that okay? Nobody does that. What they do is they assume, oh, now that we're connected, I can just blow you up. Well, you know what? You're going to blow the connection up too, because I'm going to unconnect from you.
Fortunately, there's people that are actually writing something down of content that's a real opportunity to connect, and that will differentiate you. But let me ask you this: the name of your company, what is it?
It's the EQRP company.
This is
So EQRP.co, just like the thing that we create, the EQRP, EQRP.co. And then that's where you can find all the information. And if you want to copy the book, you can go there. But that's where you're going to find all the info.
I want to give you a chance to explain why you think you are, how do you differentiate yourself from the other companies that are in the same business? What makes you special? Why should somebody come and work with your company?
There's a lot of I mean, ultimately you have to decide who you're working with, and it's not about a product. It's like going to a farmer's market. Can you get a tomato at Safeway or Whole Foods? Yeah. Can you go to a farmer's market and get the actual tomato that somebody grew and they understand? Like what we do is we create this very unique thing that is there isn't anything else that's the same. So first off, it's not a commodity. There's a lot of IRAs and individual 401ks, and those are all commodities. What you're also getting is you're getting a team of professional investors. So a lot of times people will say, well, who am I working with? You know what? You're working with investors just like you. What you're not working with is an accountant that doesn't know about investing. And I think that's a big differentiator when you've got a team of people that actually understand investing, not just because they studied it or have some designation. It's because been out there in the streets and bled. Like I understand risk. I understand allocation of assets. I understand all these things because when I screwed it up, I lost everything. So there's a big difference in when you're working with firms that have experience versus maybe a giant firm or a firm that's just going to try to price commit. Like there's one firm that does these retirement accounts, and they pride themselves on being an app, and they're gonna drive the pricing of their app into the ground, and they try to pretend they're the same as everybody else, and I laugh because their founder is literally working with Goldman Sachs to try to get their app sold. So who are you working with? I don't know. Maybe you're working with Goldman Sachs if you're working with that company. Do you want to work with them, or do you want to work with human beings that actually understand you and are focused on relationships and not transactions? It's a huge difference. Bigger companies tend to be very transactional. They say relationship, but then you watch. You talk to our clients and you'll say, and you know what they'll say every time? This company is not a company. It's a bunch of people and I'm in a relationship with them. That's what they'll say consistently because that's what we focus on.
Man, Damion, you've been on fire this entire show. It's just nonstop. It's like, whoo, drinking from a fire hose. But man, your energy, how do you keep it up so high? Throughout, it's been like a 35-minute conversation or so, and it's just been like, blah, 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 blah. It's been great having you, man.
I
Uh,
appreciate that. One thing that I can tell you is that when you shift from trying to figure out what you're going to get from the world and figuring out what your mission is and what you're actually going to deliver, everything changes. You find resources and vast amounts of energy that you didn't really realize you have. I remember back in the day when it was about the money, it was more about the amount of caffeine I was consuming, and now the mission is the caffeine. There is no caffeine, like that's it's out of my world, and there's more energy and more drive because it matters more.
Yeah, man, it's been fantastic having you on the show. I'm sure because I'm out doing the circuit and trying to get around to a lot of events, I'll probably run into you 2 or 3 times a year minimum, just because we're going to be going to the same syndication type events and real estate events. But it's been phenomenal having you on here. I loved all of your content, and I look forward to maybe having you back on the show sometime, maybe next year or down the road. And I just want to say thank you, man. Your content was awesome.
I appreciate it. Glad for everybody to be here and listen, and appreciate the work you're doing, Ruben. Let me know if I can do anything for you or anybody else listening. Always happy to hear from guys.
That's fantastic. And we'll talk soon.
All right, thank you.
Yep, take care.